Welcome to episode 1290 of The Sleeper in the Bush. I am Justin Mason, joined as always on Sundays by Jason Collette. How you doing, my friend?
Hanging in there, even though I am my own worst enemy when it comes to making fantasy decisions. I cut Andrew Benintendi this week, so everybody should be going out to pick him up because this time last year did the same thing with Chas McCormick because he wasn't playing. Benintendi was playing this year. He just wasn't doing anything. So I cut him this week. He has 6 RBIs, and he sticks it to my favorite club last night, hitting the 2 home runs, including a walk-off bomb. Yeah.
That's the way of the world with fantasy, right? Like, you cut a guy and he just has a massive week. You go pick up a guy like Jonathan Clausse and he just doesn't play at all.
Good time.
That is the beauty of fantasy. We're going to talk about more of the beauty of fantasy today. We've got a lot of FAAB discussion to talk about with a lot of guys who are making debuts or making big moves in the fantasy sphere. But before we do that, I want to bring on our special guest, our first guest episode, I think, of the regular season. We've got Blake Meyer. How you doing, my friend?
I am doing great. I'm a little sleepy, but it happens to the best of us when you're up late writing. But I'm happy to be here. This is very exciting for me.
Why don't you remind everybody where you reach on social media and then talk about what you do?
You can find me at Balake on all social media, 2 H's. I am a fantasy baseball analyst for both Fantasy Pros and Pitcher List. And I also am a co-host on the Fake Baseball podcast. It has been quite the year for me. I've been very busy. It's my first year in Tout Wars. I know you were filling in for Michael Govier in my Tout Wars draft this year. I got to fly out to New York for 28 hours, so that was pretty fun. And I am sucking my way through WRF currently, but it's been a fun year so far.
And you were nominated for an FSWA award this year. That was pretty amazing.
Yeah, that was a wild moment. I got nominated as a finalist for Baseball Writer of the Year for 2023, which was awesome. I worked really hard last year, and I had thought, I never like to think I'm going to get awards, but I thought, hey, maybe I did good enough in weekly article of the year, whatever. I didn't get that. I didn't get article of the year. And the last one they put up was Writer of the Year. And my name was the first one on the list, and it blew me away. So I'm very blessed to be able to say that I can now add that to my list of accolades. And I'm shooting for a win next year instead of just a finalist nod.
There you go. It's always great to have those FSWA nominations. Jason and I have been nominated a few times. Jason's won a few. I've only won for the podcast, but
they sit on my desk right here, baby.
There you go.
Now I got
there we go.
2013 Writer of the Year, 2018 Best Baseball Series. I was all about that 5-year pattern, so I thought this year would be another one. Nope. Shut out. I was a column finalist and podcast, and nope, shut out. So, oh well. There's room on my desk for more.
It is an honor to be nominated. There we go. That's what we say.
Yes. Yes.
Let's jump into some news. We've got mostly minor kind of news. No major things going on quite yet, but some things to talk about. Zach Gallen left his last start with a hamstring strain. It doesn't sound serious. Any worries for you there, Blake?
Not really, no. I'd rather a pitcher of mine deal with a hamstring issue than the elbow issue that everybody else seems to be dealing with. So even if he does end up missing like a start, I think it'll be okay. I'm not too worried about Gallen.
What about you, Jason? Any worries on Gallen?
No, but remember, I was out on him coming into the season because of the massive workload increase, and that he had gone up about 40-something% when you included all the postseason work. So, like Blake said, hamstring issue I can deal with. If it was upper body, if it was shoulder, elbow, more concerned. But Zach says he's going to make his next start. Let's take him at his word and see what happens first time somebody tries to bunt on him. And how he does that, or he's got to do pitcher fielding practice and cover first base on a ground ball to the right side. Let's see what happens there.
It is a start versus the Dodgers.
Ooh.
Would you consider? I just looked this up, and I was like, oh, I wonder who the start is. It's a Wednesday start versus Dodgers. Blake, would you roll him out there for that one?
God, that's tough because where you drafted Zach Gallen, you obviously plan to start him against everybody. But a slightly injured Zach Gallen against that Dodgers lineup terrifies me. I might consider finding another option if there was a better matchup, but other than that, I still got to roll him out.
Yeah, I mean, I think like obviously in a 15-team league, you're not going to find anything, but in a 10-team league, I might like roll out like a halfway decent 2-start or something over Zach Gallen this week, just because it's against the Dodgers. Maybe they take it a little bit more carefully with him in terms of how long they let him go into the game. It's so hard to like sit your studs, but I definitely would. Like, luckily for me, the only places I have him in are 15-team leagues. Like, I've got to use them. Like, it's not gonna change anything for me. But in a 10, like, I might think about it. What about you, Jason? What would you do like in a shallow league with Zach Gallen coming off the hamstring injury?
So I'll use a deep league, 11-team AL league. I had to start Chris Bassett this past week because I was out of healthy pitchers. I didn't have any. Everybody else was hurt. Oh. I had to start him. He got beaten up, but I benched Bassett everywhere else. I benched him in all my 12s and my 15s. He was on the bench. I did not get him in my AL league. This AL league, if the guy in first place, if you doubled his ERA, I'm just slightly ahead of him. That's how bad my ERA is now. I'm at 5.21 and my whip is 143. I'm dead last in both of these categories. And Chris Bassett being in my lineup this week did not help at all. But I did bench Bassett everywhere. And this was, Bassett's a guy that you were taking an SP3. So if I could bench an SP3 in all 12s and 15s, I could take the Dodgers are just putting the beating on just about everybody. And if Gallen was 100%, I'd be like, just leave him in there. He's not 100%. So I'm benching him if I had him.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to strongly consider it even in my deeper formats. But like, I think in a 10-teamer, like I totally get doing it. I hate doing it, but I totally get it.
It's only a 1-start week too, so it's not like you're doing a 2-step. It's a 1-start. It's a risky start. He's not 100%. The indicators point towards sitting him.
Yeah, I agree. We have Taj Bradley coming back from or working his way back from the IL. He's going to start a rehab assignment. Jason, you're a Reyes guy. Where are you at on Taj Bradley?
God, please hurry back. This team's so damn unwatchable right now. So he left spring with pectoral on March 12th. Here we are, April 28th as we're recording this. He's going to make his first on-field rehab. Best case scenario, he does two outings and he's back with the team. Most likely going to be 3. And so he's probably still 2 weeks away. But if you're going to get him on a discount, if he's still available in FAAB, this would be the week to do it, because next FAAB cycle, it would be in anticipation of him being in a game. So that's where it's like, if you want to take a chance to stash this week, go ahead. I have him in 3 leagues. He's been on the IL the entire time. I definitely need him in AL labor, where I've had Valdez out. I've had Pivetta out. I've had Bradley out. Remember, we draft this team March 1st. And so all these guys were in great shape then. And I've been carrying 7 relievers. So I am anxiously awaiting for him to come back to at least that fantasy team, because I need strikeouts. And that's one skill Bradley has always been able to get, strikeouts.
What about you, Blake? Where are you at on Taj Bradley?
Right there with Jason in terms of strikeouts. I'm really only going to start him when he comes back, really, if I'm in a league where I need strikeouts. He didn't impress me all that much last year. The 5.59 ERA wasn't great. The 3.83 xFIP was cool. So like there was some excitement there. He had a K- walk rate of just shy of 20%, which I like to see. So he does some things that I like, but that Rays team doesn't excite me as much as it did last year. So I'm not fully in on Bradley right now, but in a little deeper league where you need some strikeouts, I love him.
I mean, somebody who has to watch them, they're not playing good defense. They're not hitting, and the bullpen's atrocious. But other than that, it's a great team to watch. But I mean, this weekend, you got Zach Eflin and Aaron Savali going against the White Sox, and they both get blasted. And it's everything, just errors. Like, just watch it. And I feel like I'm back in the 2004 Double Ray era, right now. It's just not watchable baseball, and it's really frustrating. Thankfully, it's like we were talking off air. Thankfully, I spend most of my time waiting for Mason Miller to come in so I can watch him shove, because it's just so much fun to watch him just throw triple digits all over the plate, and guys cannot lay off it. I mean, the at bat against Gunnar Henderson the other night with the game on the line, just hundo, and no chance. And it's just so much fun watching Mason Miller. So instead of watching my favorite team struggle, I'm like hopping all over games looking for good moments, because life's too short to watch crappy baseball. And my team is not playing good baseball right now. I have no idea how they're 13-15. They feel like they're playing 7-21 baseball right now.
Yeah, my Giants are 13-15. I feel the same way about them. Just watching them play ugly baseball is depressing. I'm totally fine stashing Taj Bradley in a 15. 10s and 12s, like I just think he's probably waiver wire guy for at least right now. But keep an eye on how the rehab goes and see. I mean, this is a forward top prospect that a lot of people were pretty psyched on when he was originally coming up from the minor leagues. So someone to monitor, see how he's doing in AAA, and then kind of move from there. Miguel Sano's got some knee inflammation. Well, that was a fun experience while it lasted. Any worries on Miguel Sano there, Blake?
I mean, he's been such an interesting one because his strikeout rate is like almost 40%, but he also leads baseball in 90th EV, or 90th percentile EV, which is one of the best predictors of like future power. And so he's been so up and down, but even then he leads baseball in that 90th percentile EV, and he's got one home run on the year and a BABIP over 400. So it was fun to see where it was going to go this year, but he's going to be somebody that I just enjoy watching when he plays rather than watching him on my fantasy team.
There you go. What about you, Jason?
I'd say it's the trickle down effect, because right now he has been hitting cleano for that. And then if you look at the lineup, if Sano does have to go to the IL, you would assume that Brandon Drury moves to third base, only because they're kind of out of options about who else can play the position, which would then free up time for Aaron Hicks or Mickey Moniak to play DH to get some more playing time. But Anthony Rendon's going to be out a while. And that's probably a good thing, but he's going to be out a while. He's got a torn hamstring, not just a strain. He's got a tear in the hamstring, a significant one. They don't even have a timetable on when he can come back. So they're kind of running out of options. And so Drury may have to play third base by default here because nobody else can do it.
Yeah, I mean, Miguel Sano is still the same player he's always been, which is a guy who can't make contact. But when he does, the ball goes far. So no, like, I mean, if you're holding on to Sano, I have no problem like dropping him wherever you got him. I just don't know that he's going to be a match for. It will be interesting to see what the Angels do if they have to send him to the IL, because they're kind of a little short on pieces right now.
But it's kind of sucks for Sano. He dropped 65 pounds in the offseason, and he still has knee inflammation, right? So he loses all this weight and his body still fails him. But I'm looking at AAA going, what do they do? Maybe they call up Jordan Adams because they need some. I don't know, but they don't have a body unless Hunter Dozier. I'll continue that route. They don't have a body. And maybe they should have dealt for Garrett Cooper instead of Boston, because they don't have many options here.
Yeah, I don't know what they're gonna do. Quite honestly, just kind of looking at their minor league roster.
Stop scrolling. There's just nothing. I'm just telling you, there's nothing there.
I mean, I'm trying to think, I guess Hunter Dozier would be the solution, but they would need to add him to the 40-man.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. All right, let's talk about some FAAB. Kyle Bradish is expected to return soon. He has been on the IL since spring training with that tear in his UCL. This never feels like it ends well. And as much as I was a Kyle Bradish guy last year, I avoided him in just about every draft this year because of that injury. Where are you at on Kyle Bradish there, Blake?
I'm still out even when he comes back, just because it feels like a ticking time bomb at this point. Maybe he gets lucky and avoids it like fully tearing or any of that throughout the season, but I don't want to risk it because he's likely going to go for a decent amount of FAAB, and I can't bring myself to spend that much on him. Just for him to go out after, I mean, he could come back and blow it out in the first start, which that just worries me. So there's too many negatives for me to want to really buy in on him now, because just like you, I was out on him coming into this season. I didn't get any shares of him at all, and I still don't want any shares.
What about you, Jason?
So I was looking over at Savant because thankfully they have minor league data that you can search at least at the AAA level. And so looking at where Bradish is, looking at his pitch line chart, it's been a lot of fastballs, a lot. And he's only, I'm looking at it over 3 starts. He's thrown exactly 20 curveballs. And he's fewer than 60 breaking balls overall, but it's been a lot of fastballs. And then in his most recent outing, that fastball got down to 90 at the end of that outing. So his velocity declined a bit. He wasn't able to sustain it, and he only went 77 pitches in that outing. So I guess the good news is he hasn't been written off just yet, because we think about when this injury happened, we all just assumed he was gonna go, and he still could. But so far he's actually made it back, which is ahead of where a lot of us thought he was going to be. That said, I am not going to gets back to just a reminder, just because the guy's back doesn't mean he's 100% back. And he's not the same guy where he left off. And to me, this is concerning. And I'm, even if I had him, I'd still wait to put him back in my lineup.
Yeah, this is massively concerning to me. If he's not throwing a lot of breaking pitches, there's probably a reason for that. And if he's going to go out there and throw 60-70% fastballs, I just worry he's going to get beat the hell up. And I agree with Blake. Like, I do think this is just a ticking time bomb. It is just a matter of time before like this blows up and his arm kind of falls off. I get why guys want to avoid the surgery. It's not an easy or fun surgery to come back from, but to me, I feel like this is inevitable.
Well, there's no guarantee. I mean, we've talked forever on this podcast. There's no guarantee the surgery is not 100%. Some guys can go back and have it twice, but looking at his outing that he had on the 26th, I show 15 sliders. I show 11. So I show 26. So he had 51 fastballs and 26 breaking balls. Yeah. That doesn't feel like a Kyle Bradish ratio. And if a listener wants to send a correction, be like, hey, that's what he was doing previously. But that to me does not feel like a Bradish-like ratio. And again, the velocity was down as he was pulling out of the game. He was like 93, and then his last few fastballs were 91, 90, 90, 90, 90. And then he came out of the game. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to work well. I'd avoid him in FAAB this week. I know that a number of people are stashing him. If you've been stashing him and you can trade him when he comes back, that might be your best case scenario. Maybe let someone else take on that risk after you've kind of been stashing it for a little while. Simeon Woods Richardson, who is a kind of former top pitching prospect, is up with the Twins. Took care of the White Sox and gets another White Sox start again this week. Blake, any interest in Simeon Woods Richardson?
A little bit, actually, at least in the short term. I do like that he's facing the White Sox again. That should bode well for him, at least for one start. But looking at his advantage, his velos are way up compared to last year. Yeah. He's up 3 miles an hour on his fastball. His sliders jumped 4 miles an hour. So like he's made some kind of changes to get that velo way up. So, I mean, I like him this week for the White Sox start. I like everybody that's not a Rays starting pitcher against the White Sox. And so, yeah, I think in the short term, he's cool. I think long term, I still have questions, but in the short term, I love him.
What about you, Jason?
So Louis Varland's out of the rotation, thank God. I mentioned about the ratios earlier. Varland was a contributing factor towards that team for that. But Varland belongs in the bullpen. He's a long swing guy. Wasn't going to make it as a starting pitcher. I like Varland more in that case. But Richardson has this. I'm glad he's on the rundown because I was reading an article this morning from Lance Brodzowski's Substack, and he talks about Simeon Woods Richardson. And he said he's made some dramatic changes to his mechanics. His release height is down over 7 inches compared to last year, which may be one of the biggest drops I've tracked this year. Pretty easy to see. And he has some GIFs that show it. He's holding less torso extension in his foot strike. His velo's up 3, as Blake just mentioned. He's got more glove side movement on his fastball now because of the lower arm slot and things. So I really liked what Lance had to say about Simeon Woods Richardson in this particular article. And I feel that Woods could keep this job in the rotation because Varland doesn't need to go back in it. If Varland can come back from St. Paul, then they can use him as a long guy, use him as a bulk guy, but as a starting pitcher, Varland just wasn't cutting it. And it was great. In this, who did we talk about? Oh, Puck. Last week, we talked about Puck. It's like, okay, you had a lot of success in the bullpen. Let's throw you in the rotation. No. Varland had a lot of success in the bullpen. Let's throw him back in the rotation. No. So let's get Varland back in the major leagues. Let's get him back in the bullpen where he was shoving last year and try to get some fantasy value out of him.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, especially on Varland. I mean, just can't keep the ball in the yard, which is an absolute disaster.
Especially this year. If you can't keep the ball in the yard this year, you've got problems.
Yeah, absolutely. I like Simeon Woods Richardson as a play for this week and a guy that you could probably go week to week with, depending on the matchups. He does pitch in the Central, which is a really nice place to pitch. So I think he is a good kind of streaming target this week. Another good streaming target is Bailey Falter, who has a 2-step versus Oakland and versus the Rockies in Pittsburgh. Any interest in Bailey Falter, Jason?
Yeah, for what you just said. Oh, he's got, well, no, I thought he had Oakland and Colorado.
Isn't that what I said?
I think you said Pittsburgh.
Well, no, I said in Pittsburgh because he.
Oh, okay, sorry, that's where. But yeah, for what you just said, that's why I have interest in him because that's a really nice 2-step. Let's say you do have Zach Gallen on your team and you're like iffy about putting him there. There's a good option right there. A 2-start against those 2 opponents. That's the route I would take. So it's thank you. Come in, pitch for my team this week, and then leave it. Thank you very much.
Blake, are you in on Bailey Falter for the week? Blake, are you in on Bailey Falter for the week?
There we go. Yes, I am in on Bailey Falter for the week. I actually like a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing from him. Really leaned into his fastball this year, and it lives at the top of the zone. Which, if you have a fastball you're throwing 100 miles an hour, that's cool. He's got when he's throwing 91. I like a guy that has a little less velo on his fastball that can pinpoint it at the top of the zone. It makes it that much more effective, and it's really made a big difference this year. His stuff's not that spinny, so it's not gonna have the most movement on it, but he's doing things that are leading to like real production. And when you can start out the week in Oakland, I always love that. So yeah, I'm in on Bailey Falter, especially since he shut down good teams already, like Baltimore and Philadelphia. If he can shut them down, he can definitely have a good week this week.
Yeah, I mean, for me, and I say this all the time, like the best thing to attack when you're tag streaming pitching matchups is the opponent, and so when you're getting like Oakland and the Rockies on the road, which are like 2 of the best opponents you can face, you definitely want to attack it. Back to closer chaos in Milwaukee, where you have we started the year with Abner Uribe as the closer. He lost that job. It looked like Joel Payamps was becoming the guy, and then Trevor McGill got a save once he came off the IL. McGill is going to be a widely picked up guy this week. Are you buying in on McGill there, Blake?
Yes, only because I need saves in a lot of places. He's not a big strikeout guy. He walks a few too many people for me to like out of a closer. But if I need just strictly like I'm here for saves and that's it, then yeah, I'll buy in on McGill, at least for right now, while they try and figure out who's going to be their closer rest of the year.
What about you, Jason?
I wish I could go back and remember what we said last week about this Barry situation and why we were there. One of the things I was trying to look at here is I wanted to see, because Payamps did have the save on Wednesday with only 11 pitches, but then he came out and did a 20-pitch hold on the 25th in the game that McGill got the save in. So I'm just kind of curious. And both guys had pitched a previous game. So on Wednesday, the 24th, McGill had a 16 pitch hold and Payams had an 11 pitch save. And then the very next day, Payams had a 20 pitch hold and then McGill had a 12 pitch save. And I don't remember what the schedule was that particular day to say, what was the game situation? Was it like a 10 inning game and it became a hold
No,
because of that?
Payams came in the 8th.
Oh, I who knows? I don't know what Pat Murphy is thinking there. I don't know why the switch like that. So who knows? Other than that, I mean, I love what Pat Murphy's doing with Milwaukee right now, but that's kind of weird.
Yeah, so I'll pretty much repeat what I think I said last week, which is I think this job just changes hands left and right. Like I think that Milwaukee right now is trying to best utilize their best relievers in the best possible spots, and that means sometimes guys are going to come in the 8th, sometimes guys are going to come in the 7th, sometimes guys are going to come in the 9th. And so for me, when you've got a situation like this, I'm either staying out of it because I don't want to deal with the headache that is involved, or if I have to get involved because, like Blake said, there are a number of teams where you just need saves, you just need anybody. I'm taking the cheapest guy, right? And so, like last week, I picked up Trevor McGill. I didn't start him, unfortunately, to get this save that he got earlier in the week, but I just picked him up for like $7, and I was like, okay, let's see what happens. And now I've got him on my team for cheap. Like, I think the people who are going to run out to the waiver wire this week and spend $100 on Trevor McGill are going to be kicking themselves when Abdi Uribe gets a save next week. Like, I think it's just going to be frustrating as all hell. So,
definitely see that happening.
Yeah, that is my take on it. Another guy in kind of a kind of muddled situation is Mark Leiter Jr. The Cubs have moved on from Adbert Alzolay, at least for now. And Hector Neris and Mark Leiter Jr. seem like they're going to be the top guys maybe to get saves. What's your read on this situation, Jason?
Yeah, that's about the same. That's what they're doing. Neris has got the 2 saves. We talked about Neris on this podcast before the season and the risk associated with the underlying skills and indicators don't point towards this being a good situation long term. Right now, he's got 2 saves this week. And so people are going to be bidding accordingly on that. But the short-term success over the past week does not change the fact that a lot of what we saw last year there was a reason why Neris stayed out in the free agent market like he did. And the underlying skills do not point towards this being a good long-term play. Short-term play, sure. Long-term, be ready to move on quickly.
What about you, Blake? What's your read on the Cubs situation?
I'm right there with Jason. I don't have a good read on it at all because these teams that have a revolving door at closer, you can never really lock down who it's going to be from week to week. And so I'm not really in on picking any of the guys up now until maybe somebody shakes himself out as the lead guy. But until then, I'm not. I don't. That's about as much of a read as I have on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Neris is definitely going to get the first role. He's got the big the bigger of the contracts than the rest of the guys in his bullpen. But again, I think this is another one that just changes hands kind of, throughout the season. Neris has not looked good in spite of the fact that he has locked down 2 saves this last week. Mike Leiter Jr. has looked like the best reliever. I wouldn't mind taking kind of like the cheap spec on him if you could get him for a few bucks in a league, but I also could see Adbert Alzolay just getting back on track and getting his job back. So and then I'm pretty sure Yancy Almonte got a save recently as well. So
you are correct.
It could be anybody, right? And if the Cubs are in contention, they may just trade for someone at some point. So I think this is just going to be another frustrating situation that I would avoid if I could, but if I can't avoid, then I'll take a spec probably on on Leiter Jr. or maybe even just a spec on someone who dropped Adbert Alzolay, who was a really good closer last year and just, lost a job because he struggled early. All right. The big one this week in a lot of leagues is going to be Heston Kjerstad, who's the top prospect for the Orioles, got called up. He was destroying AAA this year. But there's some questions about where he's going to play. How much is he going to play? How aggressive are you going to be on Heston Kjerstad this week, Blake?
A less aggressive than most people. I understand why a lot of people are going for him. 10 home runs in 21 games in AAA is insane. What's a strike rate? Just barely over just barely over 20%. That's awesome. He's walking almost 12% of the time in the minors. I just genuinely don't know how they fit him and everybody else in the lineup to get consistent at bats. And if I'm going to spend the type of FAAB that's likely going to take to get Kierstad on your team, I need immediate production and consistent production out of that player. It's one thing to win them for whatever $150 and be like, oh, cool, I got Kierstad on my team. But then if you can't play him for 2 weeks because he's playing once every 3 days, is that really a win at that point? So I'm going to be much less aggressive. If he gets consistent playing time at some point this year, I think it's all systems go. I think he's going to be an incredible player. He could have the type of run that we saw Colton Cowser start the year with. But it's just a matter of, can he get to that point and how long will it take him to get to that point?
Yeah, since being called up, the Orioles have played 5 games and he has played in 1 of them. Jason, are you gonna get aggressive on Heston Kierstad?
Yeah, you just took my main talking point.
Sorry.
You know, he's been up since Tuesday, and he's been in the lineup all of once. So he's like, he was 8th that day, and then he's been on the bench ever since. And they've got 3 lefties this week, so he's probably not going to play against those guys either. Then you throw in the fact that Jackson Holliday, who was playing as good, if not better than Kierstad in AAA, came up and struggled as mightily as he did. Let somebody else spin the triple digits FAAB here, because this may not be a long play. If trying to remember the other injuries that they have that bring it back. If Austin Hayes' calf heals up quickly, Kierstad could be right back in AAA Norfolk with this situation. I mean, when they call up Bradish, who's going to go down? I'm trying to look at what their situation. They already have the 4-man bench, so they've got plenty of pitchers. But the fact that he's up and not playing screams volumes. It's like they needed a bat, but at the same time, they're not trying to move him in this lineup. And this is pretty much what we said last week. If he was going to come up, there's no guarantee he's going to play anywhere.
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. Add in the fact that he's util only in most formats, which just makes him a little bit more of a roster construction issue. I don't mind rostering a guy who's UT only if he's going to be in my everyday lineup. Not if he's going to play 3 days a week or 1 day a week, as he has since his call up. So for me, like, I'll probably put a bid on him, kind of somewhere in my waterfall, but it's not going to be a high bid. I'll let other people spend that money. All right, Matt Mervis. The Matt Mervis experience is happening again. This is a guy that everybody was stoked on at the 2022 Arizona Fall League, only to have the Cubs completely block him because clearly, I don't know, like he punched someone's dog or something. I don't know what's going on, why the Cubs hate Matt Mervis so much, but he is up now. Any interest in Matt Mervis there, Jason?
It's like the Undertaker gif where, like, coming up from the dead. It's like, ooh, fantasy. I would say the only good thing pointing in his favor right now is that the aforementioned Garrett Cooper was kicked off the roster, designated for assignment, and traded to Boston. So it feels like, all right, Matt, we've like robbed you of 50 million chances in advance of this, but now that you're up, like, make the most of it, kid. So mild interest in this, but again, the fact the Cubs did 2 moves here to make this work, called him up and got rid of one of the 50 roadblocks they've put in front of this kid since he was supposed to be the next great thing. Yay. I mean, this is probably the first positive bit of fantasy news that we've had in Matt Mervis in a long time. Every other news bit we get is they've signed this corpse to play in front of Matt Mervis. I was waiting for Leon Durham to come out of retirement, but that didn't happen yet.
What about you, Blake? Are you interested in Mervis at all?
I feel like I sound like a Debbie Downer on this episode. I'm not in on anybody. I'm not really in on Mervis right now, just because he has always struck me as a guy, as one of those guys that just he's really strong. So he hits a lot of minor league home runs. He's got like a good amount of minor league power, which is awesome. But then it doesn't translate when he gets to the major league level. His hit tool is not great. So his power kind of has to make up for a lacking hit tool. And his power never seems to make up for it when he gets a shot at the major league level. So he's another one of those guys that I've got to see I got to see literally anything out of him at the majors before I really start to get interested in him. And I think he did pitch last night too. I think he gave up 6 earned runs last night, so he got a shot on the bump, and it didn't go that well either.
At least I was willing to take one for the team. Like, I'll go ruin my.
That Boston box score, it was 8-0, and then I see 17-0. What happened? It was like Matt Mervis and Patrick Wisdom both pitched.
Good for them. I love watching a position player just get rocked on the mound. I'm a little bit interested in Matt Mervis. He's played 4 of, I think, the 5 games since his call-up. I think he probably will be on the strong side of the platoon as kind of their main DH, at least for a little while. But, I was a big Mervis guy in that 2022, kind of November of 2022, time. And I feel like he needs to be given an opportunity. So far, it hasn't looked good. He is hitting under 100 right now, 0.083 in his 4 games. But if the Cubs kind of give him a little bit of leash, there is some power there. He has had decent strikeout numbers in the minor leagues. So, and even with the struggle so far, like he's making 100% zone contact right now. So obviously super small sample. We don't want to go crazy over that, but hopefully the Cubs give him a little leash so we can at least see what we've got him in 15-team leagues. If I need a first baseman or a corner, I might take a gamble on Matt Mervis. All right, Vaughn Grisham was one of the big names traded in the offseason. Part of that Chris Sale deal gives him an opportunity to play, but then he got hurt. He's going to be coming, I believe he's going to be activated tomorrow, so it might be a big FAAB guy this weekend. Any interest in Vaughn Grisham there, Blake?
Yeah, I actually do have interest in Vaughn Grisham to mix it up a little bit. He's somebody that's going to hit probably for a pretty good average. It wouldn't surprise me if he hits at the bottom of that Red Sox lineup, which isn't necessarily my favorite thing in the world, but he's got enough speed to keep things interesting. And he could be a big extra base hits guy, not a big home run guy. So maybe I like him more in a points league than your traditional league, because doubles and triples play a lot better in a points league. And that feels like more of his niche. But he's got a good hit tool. So he's going to hit maybe 270, 280. I think he's hit 287 for his career in 64 games already, which is good. And he limits strikeouts. So I like him in specific leagues. I think there is value there. Maybe 10 teams I'm going to avoid him, or a 12 team that doesn't have like a middle infield spot. Maybe I'll wait on him, but anything outside of that, I like Vaughn Grisham.
What about you, Jason? You buying in on Vaughn Grisham?
I am, only because I don't know how much longer Boston can carry Valdez and Rafaela in the lineup. I mean, neither of these guys are hitting. Rafaela may have saved his job yesterday with the home run and 7 RBIs. A lot of that coming off the aforementioned position. But it's like those 2 guys at the bottom of the lineup have been bad. The fact they've also had to, Yoshida has not been able to DH because they've had to play Devers at DH. Now Devers finally did get back in the field today rather, and then that gave Yoshida his first crack in the lineup this week because he hasn't been in the lineup. So Grisham, yes, because he should get in that lineup right away. As Blake said, he's probably going to be at the bottom of the lineup. But then again, Rob Refsnyder's hit 3rd a lot of this week, so there could be some opportunities there. I'd also like to see Refsnyder maybe stay in the lineup and Valdez go down, or Rafael. One of those guys has got to go when Grisham's coming back, because neither of them are hitting. They're both playing middle infield spot. So you figure one of those guys has got to go, and the one that doesn't have the big contract may be the one that gets to stay.
Yeah, I think that it seems kind of likely that William Abreu could find his way back down.
No, he's actually playing. He's been hitting cleanup all week. How are they going to do that to me? I mean, him. But seriously, he's hit cleanup all week. How are they going to take this guy out of the lineup? He's actually hitting well right now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe. Is there a reason why Yoshida's not playing?
I think it's because Devers couldn't play in the field the last couple of days, so they've had to DH. So Devers, when he wasn't playing, then he DH'd 3 straight days, and Yoshida didn't play. But even the 2 games where Devers wasn't even an option, Tyler O'Neill was. So I believe it's just been hey, we need to give some of these guys, they're not field ready just yet. So Yoshida's been the victim of playing time because they've had to provide an extra day for Devers and O'Neal.
I see what they're going to send out David Hamilton is what's going to happen. Because Hamilton's only played one game in the last week. So maybe
that would be the logical one.
Yeah.
But I mean, take your pick. They've got 3 guys playing in the middle who aren't hitting anything.
Yeah. So I like Von Grisham. I never liked him to the level that other fantasy analysts did. But I mean, he's a guy who does make a lot of in zone contact. He's got a little bit of pop and a little bit of speed. To me, he is one of those guys who is an accumulator. And you need, for accumulators to work, you need for them to be playing full time, and you'd hope they'd be playing towards the top of the lineup. He's definitely not going to play towards the top of the lineup, but Boston weirdly does not care that much about defense in the middle. I mean, that's why they had Trevor Story at shortstop, right? So I think that he has a really good opportunity to play quite a bit. If he was on the wire, I think I'd get aggressive here. I mean, Grisham has hit at pretty much every level along the way. There's no reason to think he can't hit now. His issues has always been defensive. Like I said, it doesn't seem like Boston cares as much about the defense as they do about the bats. All right, moving right along to the next guy on the list. It is the aforementioned Tommy Pham. We did talk about him last week. I think, Jason, you are probably still sticking with we need to pick him up. So, Blake, where are you at on Tommy Pham?
I think he's interesting enough that he's worth the pickup. He's making a lot of soft contact right now, but it's a lot of soft line drives, which are good for the BABIP, and anything that's good for the BABIP is good for the batting average. So that's why he's hitting 400 in just 2 games so far. But he's a guy that hit 16 dingers with 22 stolen bases last year. So he's got the power and speed to make it interesting if you add him in like a 5 outfield league. I love him. I think he's definitely worth an addition. And the White Sox don't have anybody that's going to take playing time from him. So he checks a lot of boxes for me for a guy of waivers that I'm looking for.
Jason, anything that you want to add from your talk about Tommy Pham from last week?
Yeah, he's the MVP. He's been on the White Sox. They've won 2 games since he's joined the club. And in all seriousness, like I'm actually miffed that I lost out my home league. We do Saturday night FAAB. I lost by $1. I thought so my $16 out of 100 was going to be enough. No, somebody bid 17. I was like, oh. So yeah, that. But in all seriousness, he's trying to play his way into his next employer. He's not going to be with the White Sox all year, but he's already hitting high in the lineup. He's doing what Tommy Pham does, as Blake said, line drives. That's Tommy Pham's game. One of the best, honestly, one of the best disciplined hitters in the game. Go back and look at his numbers. He does not expand his zone. He doesn't, it's more line drive than it is fly ball home run power, but that park's great fit. And he's clearly changed the culture in Chicago. So they're now back in the playoff picture. They're going to win like 18 of the next 20. Book it. But in all seriousness, we said it last week. Get Pham on your roster. He's going to play every day, and he's going to bring power, speed. And what did we say? The teens home runs, the steals last year. Yeah, he's 36, but he's a very good athlete. Even dropped 15 pounds this offseason. Get him in your lineup and enjoy it.
I want to clarify for Jason, because there is a listener out there that anytime I say something sarcastically, like, gets really upset because they think I'm being serious. When I say sarcastic things, that Jason does not think that the White Sox are going to go to the playoffs on the back of Tommy Pham. So I just want to make sure we're clear on this, so I don't get another angry comment on our 1-star review because someone made a sarcastic comment on the podcast.
Stranger things have happened.
Yeah,
I mentioned the Rays from years ago. One of the years in 2004, I think they won 13 straight games, and then they lost like 15 of their next 16. Things happen. Baseball's a funny sport.
I would bet my house that the White Sox don't make the playoffs. So, I mean, I think that is probably the safest bet in baseball right now.
Yeah, we are talking about the AL Central. I mean, yes, the Guardians are doing really well, but we're still talking about the Central.
Yeah, we're still talking about the White Sox, though. All right, Hunter Goodman is going to be a big pickup in FAAB. This is a guy with a ton of power and was hitting well in the minor leagues, hitting 298, 352, 690 with 7 home runs in just 20 games. Plays in Colorado. I think he's going to play a decent amount while he's up. Any interest in Hunter Goodman there, Jason?
Well, we know he's going to be on the road for some of it, which is problematic. Not as intriguing right away that he's going to be on the road. We already mentioned that he's going to be playing in Pittsburgh. And then, so we have, who do they have on the schedule? Oh, they're at Miami and at Pittsburgh. Not a great week, but if you want to get ahead of things, they're home against San Francisco and Texas next week. So if you want to do something cheap and get them now, stash for next week when they're home for the entire week, yes. But Miami and Pittsburgh, not great environments for that particular skill.
What about you, Blake? Any interest in Hunter Goodman?
I'm very interested in Hunter Goodman. I've been interested in Hunter Goodman since he got the call last year. He's one of those guys that in the minors, if you're going to be a guy that has big power in the minors, for it to stand out to me, it's got to be like video game type numbers. And that's essentially what he did in the minor leagues. I mean, I think last year he had, 70 extra base hits in 125 games or something like that last year, which is crazy. But the big thing for me that he does that a lot of the kind of big bopper AAA guys don't do is he tends to hit a lot more line drives than just being very dependent on I can hit the ball hard and I hit it in the air type of guy. He's a big line drive guy, and he plays his home games at Coors Field. So going on the road to start isn't going to necessarily be great, but he does a lot of things that I think when he gets rolling, he's going to put up the type of numbers that are going to make him a very, very, very interesting player for the rest of the year.
I'm not a big Hunter Goodman fan. And it's because I don't like these guys that can't make a ton of in-zone contact, right? Like we're talking about a guy who's pretty much lived at or around or above a 15% swinging strike rate all throughout the minor leagues, right? Like, and so while he has had some stretches where like, hey, well, in AAA last year, he hit 371 with 9 home runs in 15 games. Like he can go on these hot stretches. We also have to remember that while it's great that the Rockies play in Colorado, they really do struggle when they leave the road. But also that a lot of these minor league systems for the Rockies play in these extreme environments like Colorado Springs, right? That inflate these minor league numbers. Why did everybody think that Brendan Rodgers was going to be like the next big star in Major League Baseball? Was because of all the crap he was doing in the minor leagues. Yeah, like he was doing like he was in all these like tiny minor league parks where he was just destroying the baseball. So when I think a lot of people go and they look and they see like, oh my God, like he was crushing it in AAA. Everybody crushes it in AAA in Colorado, for Colorado. Like, so I think that there is a lot of volatility to this profile. There is a ton of power. The video game power is like legit. He's like 70, 80 grade power. The question for me is, will he be able to make enough contact to make that power or unleash that power? And I still have massive question marks about that. All right. Next guy on the list is another guy with really flashy tools. A guy that I haven't loved Hunter Goodman. I have loved Joe Adell. I fall for the Joe Adell experience every single time. I'm a little bit more skeptical about it this time around just because I've been burned so many times before. Blake, should I be picking up Joe Adell right now?
Right now, yeah. He's probably more of like a short-term addition for me. Like I'm going to get him while he's hot and fun. And then when the wheels start to fall off like they tend to do, I'll probably move on from him. But right now he's got power and speed. He can hit the ball an absolute mile. He's fun to watch right now, and he's fun to roster right now. So yeah, I'm in on him for the current time that we're in. What
about you, Jason? Are you buying in on Joe Adell? Is it time?
I've never sold on Joe Adell. I have been like one of the lone bastions of holdout for him. And I rarely drop profanity in this podcast, but it was absolute horseshit that he was thrown the caught stealing against Baltimore to end the game this week. He was safe. And I only bring this up because Joe Adell's been thrown out 4 times in 9 attempts now. One of them was absolutely his fault. It was against Tampa Bay when he overran second base because he just took it for granted that he was getting that base. That was absolutely his fault. But for the umpire to call him out this week and then replay to confirm that call, terrible, absolutely terrible. But what I like about all the Angels, in fact, we talked about this in spring training, Ron Washington has this club on the move. Joe Adell has the athleticism to steal bases. The fact that he's already attempted 9 and has been caught 3 times, not saying 4 because that was not caught stealing, they haven't slowed him down. And the other encouraging thing is he's making a lot more contact right now. His strikeout rate is 22%, which is right about league average, which is about half of what he normally does. I mean, he's normally striking out Miguel Sano-ish territory, and here he is striking out league average. So there's a lot of positive indicators for Joe Adell right now, and he's playing every day. You look at the lineup, I was looking at this earlier. Joe Adell has hit 6 or 7, 5 straight days. And we already mentioned that LA is running out of bodies. And so Adell's got to play in there. And so I am happy that my multiple shares of Joe Adell are now coming to fruition, and he's serviceable right now.
All right. You guys ready for this? Because it's Joe Adell slander time.
I'm
actually
leaving the room. Bye.
Yeah,
don't do it.
I mean, if you've listened to the podcast for the last few years, you've heard me just gush about like the physical tools that Joe Adell has. That has not changed. Dude can hit the ball hard when he hits it. Dude is fast. Weirdly, like very Malik Smith-ish in terms of like he's really athletic, but not a good defender, which is a little mind-boggling. But I mean, all the proper physical tools that you look for in a potential superstar of a player. And the reason why I loved him when he got drafted and then coming up through the minor leagues. The problem is the underlying skills have not really changed that much. He's got like a 77% zone contact, which is around 7 to 8% below league average. He still has an almost 15% swinging strike rate. Yes, I think you can pick him up right now. And like Blake said, and Blake nailed it, this is a play for now. He's hot right now. He's playing every day right now. Do I think he's going to be playing every day in June or July? I have a really hard time buying it with kind of the underlying skills. But especially if you're playing in a 10 or a 12 team league, you worry about right now. Worry about July and August. But right now he's running hot, and it seems like the new kind of management in Anaheim has kind of come back around to him. He's also out of options, so they can't really like send him down if he does struggle. So, because I don't think they want to like open him up to a DFA because some team will just snag those tools off of the wire. But long term, I'm still very skeptical of Joe Adell. There have been improvements. When I say like he's gotten almost 15% swing and strike rate, that is, or it's 14.5%. It is the best of his career. Like it's not good, but it is the best of his career. So that is something. And I do want Joe Adell to be good. I just don't know how many teams he's going to be on in mine. All right. What about Addison Barger, who's been a prospect of note? He's made his debut for the Blue Jays. He's played third base and outfield. I think he's going to play pretty much mostly outfield in Toronto. Any interest in Addison Barger, Jason?
So he's up because Kevin Kiermaier is hurt again. And he's got, Kiermaier's got a hip flexor. This could be something he's out for a while. And so one of the things I looked at with this is they wanted a left-handed bat because right now the Barger has been up in a platoon situation with David Snyder. So against righties, Barger's played. He's yet to get a hit. He's over his call-up right now. And so I'm wondering, looking at the depth chart, I'm wondering if they're going to dip down to another lefty who they've already had up at the major league level last year in Spencer Horwitz, because Spencer Horwitz is absolutely raking down in AAA Buffalo right now with a 354, 510, 494 line. It's like ride it while it's hot. I don't know where he's been playing, but 20 runs, scored 15 RBIs, and he's got a 24% walk rate and 14% strikeout rate. And Barger hasn't done. So if you're just looking for a platoon at bat, why not bring up somebody who has at least 44 plate appearances of major league experience and didn't exactly embarrass himself last year in that route. So I don't know if Barger's going to be up long enough for anybody to enjoy any squeeze out of this.
What about you, Blake? Are you in on Barger at all?
No, I'm pretty out on Barger. I mean, if I had to find a way to be in on him, it would be in like a deep points league because that's about all I would really like him in, anyways, if he was producing. But outside of that, no, I'm pretty out on Barger right now.
Yeah, I don't know how long he's going to stick and how much he's going to play. So I think he is going to be a big name that some people buy into this week, but I think there are other options on the wire that are going to be a little bit more interesting. I saw a thing that Ryan Bloomfield tweeted out about like some of the guys who are hitting the ball the hardest so far this year. And one of the names on that list was Lawrence Butler. He plays for the A's. He is one of their prospects. Kind of been a kind of a volatile guy in terms of the profile, but he is playing right now. Blake, any interest in Lawrence Butler?
I mean, he has fun power a little bit. I guess if I had to find something that excites me, he's another one. He doesn't excite me very much. So I have a hard time being in on him outside of like very deep leagues. So I'm probably out on Butler right now, but he does kind of jump off the page as one of those kind of fun guys if you're into having fun guys on your roster.
What about you, Jason? You want Lawrence Butler at all?
So it's funny he made the list because I did the Baseball HQ radio podcast this week and recorded that Thursday morning with Patrick Davitt. And if you've been on that podcast, you know how he likes to do booms and banes at the end. And Lawrence Butler was who I picked as a boom guy because, and I had, I don't even go on Twitter, so I didn't see what Ryan said, but I said that, you look at the expected contact from Lawrence Butler and he should be doing a lot better than what he's doing. And the fact, and then what I said is he plays every day in Oakland. He's going to play. He's going to have the opportunity. If the expected performance can catch up with the actual, there could be better days ahead than what we're currently looking at. At the time we recorded, he was hitting below 200. Now he's above 200. And so we're talking about a guy last year with 15 home runs and 21 steals between AA and AAA. So it's like looking for opportunity and trying to find that in a deeper league. I have some interest in Lawrence Butler. Shallower leagues, no. But deeper leagues, if I'm talking 15-team mixed, obviously AL only, interested.
So I brought up the Ryan Bloomfield thing because I actually kind of discussed it with Bloomfield a little bit because I've not been a Butler believer. The tools are really interesting. He does hit the ball hard. There is speed in this profile. And so if he could get everyday playing time, he could be pretty interesting. The problem is it's the zone contact. 74% zone contact is over 10% below league average, 14% swing and strike rate. Yes, when he does make contact, he makes it really hard. And one of the reasons why the expected BA is up is because the BABIP should be higher considering how hard he hits that ball. But I do think there are going to be massive kind of swings with a guy like Butler. And while he has played better defense this year, his defense isn't very great. So I can't even be like, at least the defense will keep him in the game. It's kind of below average overall defensive profile. At least it has been previously. Like I said, it looks like he's improved it a little bit so far this year, but I think this is one of those guys where you kind of got to find the hot streaks and ride them. It's just going to be hard to kind of figure out how quickly those are going to end because the contact skills inside the zone haven't not been great this year or previously. So I'm a little bit more concerned about that. But I think he's a guy that maybe in the short term, if he gets hot and looks like he could at some point, he might be a guy to pick up. I do feel like this has kind of been the bummer of a podcast in terms of that.
Well, I think it's been good. Whereas, we haven't really been in consensus on too many guys where it's one of us will say something positive. Somebody says something negative. And Justin, you've been the tiebreaker a few times, but it's it's good that we're not like this echo chamber. I love them. I love them. I love them. Next. There's some productivity. There'll be some lessons learned out of this.
Well, and too, if these are all the names that a lot of, I think, people are going to be trying to pick up in FAAB this week, and maybe people will pump the brakes on some of them as opposed to going full bore because we have been a little bit more negative today than we normally are. A guy that maybe we'll be negative on, we maybe won't be negative on, is Pete Crow Armstrong, who is a top prospect for the Cubs. and is now up because Cody Bellinger's on the IL with a couple broken ribs. Any interest in Pete Crow Armstrong there, Jason?
So, yeah, I would like to actually combine both names. Let's look at Pete Crow Armstrong and Mike Tauchman here. Of the two, I prefer Mike Tauchman. Mike Tauchman's going to hit higher in the lineup. He's most of the time when he's been in the Chicago lineup, that's what he's doing. And then right now, he's hit second each of the since Bellinger left the lineup. Tauchman has hit second throughout. And we're talking about a guy with expected contact. I remember I was watching the series when the Cubs were playing in Seattle last week, and I was watching the Cubs broadcast, and it was funny. It's like sometimes you learn things watching the broadcast, and Tauchman had hit a couple of balls to like the wall in Seattle, and they made a mention. They're like, man, somebody who cannot wait to get out of Seattle and get back home to Chicago has got to be Mike Tauchman. It feels like he's been doing a lot of this on this road trip, and yep, sure enough. And so he's had a nice thing. So, yes, a like Joe Adell, long time love for Mike Tauchman and his skills, even though there are some limitations there. But of these two, I want Tauchman because, again, he's going to hit higher in the lineup. Pete Crow Armstrong has hit low, and they have him in a platoon, so he's played the last 3 games. But then you've got 3 right-handed bats on the bench as well that he can be pulled out for. Whereas Tauchman, much like Adele, is also out of options, so he's going to have the longer leash here.
What about you there, Blake? You got a preference on Pete Crow Armstrong versus Tauchman?
I mean, yeah, I lean more towards Tauchman as well. I loved Tauchman last year there for stretches, especially in the summer months. He led off quite a bit, which, first of all, when you can get a guy off of waivers that's going to be hitting leadoff, that's always fun. Pete Crow Armstrong is cool for stolen bases, but he's one of those. He's going to steal a lot of bases and play great defense, but he's not going to do a whole lot of anything else type of players. Tauchman's not necessarily going to have this tremendous power or put up big numbers, but he's going to hit towards the top of the lineup. He's going to score a good amount of runs. He's going to get on base his fair share. He's going to do a lot of things that, like Justin, you said, with an accumulator. That's kind of what he is, and he's an accumulator that's going to spend a decent amount of time hitting towards the top of the Cubs lineup. So I like Tauchman more than I like Crow Armstrong.
Yeah, we're going to sweep it on this one. Pete Crow Armstrong is like a top tier prospect, but I think sometimes people forget that like prospect lists are often really, really influenced by defense. And the problem with Pete Crow Armstrong is while he's an amazing defender, he's not a particularly good hitter. He can steal some bases like Blake mentioned, but I don't know how much playing time he's actually going to get, and if you're even going to want him when he's doing that playing time. Whereas, like Tauchman, I know he's kind of like, I guess he's now the older born guy at 33. But at one point, he was like the younger, interesting guy that a lot of people, including Alex Chamberlain, just absolutely love. Like
he has
just
a jersey of Mike Tauchman.
Absolutely,
the one guy who probably has that, but he's got it.
I think Tauchman's going to play regularly, at least on the strong side of the platoon. And like you guys said, like he could lead off in Chicago quite a bit. So if I'm picking up one of these guys, it's for sure Tauchman. Let's finish out with an old friend of mine, who's Joey Bart, who has, he never seemed to get it together in San Francisco, was traded early on in the season to Pittsburgh. And has done the most he can with his opportunities there. Any interest in Joey Bart there, Blake?
Maybe in like a deep 2-catcher league if you need somebody in the short term. Joey Bart might interest me a little bit then, but outside of that, probably not. He had a hot couple games to start with Pittsburgh, and then he's kind of faded out a little bit. He had that 3-run home run the other day, but he's making the worst overall contact of his career at 63%, even though he's chasing the fewest amount of pitches he's ever chased in small sample size. So I'm not fully sold on him, but if you need somebody in a pinch, like in the short term, I could see Bart having at least some kind of utility for you right now.
What about you there, Jason? Any interest in Joey Bart?
So he's got a nice schedule coming up. He's at Oakland and then home versus the Rockies. So you have some things there. Then he moves on to the Angels at home and the Cubs at home. Then he hits the road with Milwaukee. Then he's at Wrigley, and then he gets a revenge series against your Giants. So it's like you may be able to squeeze out a couple of, at least get to the revenge series. It's always nice when you get to do that. But I'm trying to figure out exactly what Pittsburgh's doing because right now it's just alternating. It's like one day Davis catches, the other day Bart catches, and there's no rhyme or reason. They're both righties. I can't tell if it's a matchup, but when Bart's in the lineup, he does happen to hit higher in the lineup. When Davis is in it, he hits low. Yeah, I don't know, but the schedule plays out favorably for things. And like Blake said, if you're in a 2-catcher league, you can certainly take your chances. Like I'm in a 2-catcher AL league, and I'm looking at Alejandro Kirk, like giving 2 middle fingers. I'm like, come on, dude, do something for me. And I know as soon as I cut him, he's going to go off, which is why I'm going to continue to ride him out. Hopefully he'll wake up at some point with this, but this is not a great, not what I was expecting from Alejandro Kirk this year with that. But if I had the opportunity, I could bench Kirk. I don't want to cut him. I can't recommend doing that, but if you could bench him and try Bart out and see what happens, certainly go for it. Schedule is favorable for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with Bart is he's always kind of been a fastball seeker. Like he's a guy who can just hit fastballs, can't really do anything else. The good news is, and it's super small sample, like really, really small sample. It's actually hitting 300 against breaking pitches this year, which is a huge improvement because we're talking about a guy who previously hit below the Mendoza line against breaking pitches in last season. He was hitting 143 against breaking stuff. He hit even worse against off-speed stuff. So there has been some improvements. Obviously, again, it is really small sample, so it's hard to know if there are actually like these improvements can be sustained. But I think the other question is like, what is Pittsburgh going to do with like Smalley Grandal comes back, right? Like, I think there's a really good chance that Henry Davis gets sent down. He has struggled quite a bit. Neither Bart nor Grandal can get sent down because they're out of options. So. For me, I think if Bart continues to play even halfway decently, I think this could really do a number on Henry Davis's value in fantasy, at least for redrafts, because I don't know that Henry Davis will be on this team for very much longer.
Henry Davis has the options, Bart doesn't, and they signed Grandal for a reason. Although if you put Grandal in there, I'm worried about how many guys are going to be stealing bases off the Pirates because he's ass at throwing out guys. The last couple of years, he was the absolute worst at it.
All right. That's going to wrap us up for this episode. Blake, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me on. I had a lot of fun doing this. It's always fun to come on and talk baseball.
Absolutely. We'll definitely do it again. Remind everybody where you can reach on social media and plug anything you got going on.
You can find me on social media at Buhlockaye, BUHHLOCKAYE. You can find my writing at Fantasy Pros and Pitcher List. I think my weekly waiver wire article should be up and published on Fantasy Pros right now as we speak. I have a Points League Paradise article that comes out every Tuesday over at Pitcher List. And then I also host the Fake Baseball Podcast, which we record live every Tuesday and Thursday. You can find that on wherever you listen to podcasts.
There you go. Definitely make sure you are following Blake on the Twitter machine or the social media machine. And make sure you're following all his work because he is an award nominee. He's a good guy. I appreciate you coming on, Blake. Jason, remind everybody where you reached and what you're working on.
Cool. Blue Sky at the handle on the screen there. If you want to hear me on other podcasts, this week I was on Fantasy Feud with on the Pitcher List feed with Sarah Sanchez and Trevor, and drawing a blank on Trevor's last name. Apologies, but I was on with them on Tuesday night, and then I mentioned earlier I was on Baseball HQ Radio this week with Patrick Davitt. We had about 90 minutes, so it's a long one, and you kind of go through. But if you listen to that podcast on the reg, you know that it is a long podcast because there's a lot of news in it. But I recorded with Patrick on Thursday morning, and so we talked about a few things, and encourage you to go over and check it out and listen, and then collect calls with RotoWire. This week I wrote about Jordan Walker. Using the same pun that everybody used, that he was walking to Memphis. And it's just a reminder between Jordan Walker and Jackson Holiday. I don't care how talented you are. Baseball's a humbling game. And both of these guys are so young and they've never really had the chance to fail much. Even last year when Jordan Walker was sent down, he was still hitting rather well and it was clear playing time manipulation. But this year it's like, no, he wasn't doing anything well. And so the demotion was absolutely earned, and hopefully he can right himself down there. Because last year when he came back up in June for the rest of the season, he was productive. It just right now when you watch him, he's just very much in between things, to the point where he has one more line drive than the three of us on this podcast today. He's either beating it into the ground or hitting it up into the air, but neither of them were going that far. And so that's what we need. We need to see him get back, because I know I had him in at least one league, and I took him in a single digit round. And I know I saw him go as high as the 7th round. And this is not what we were expecting from somebody this talented. But again, we're talking about a guy who's not even 22 years old yet. All of his age peers. I went to a game in Kannapolis this week where half the roster is older than Jordan Walker. And Jordan Walker has already had 500 plus plate appearances at the major league level. And half these guys down here have never even made it out of low A ball. And that's what we have to remember with these things. So I would say you got to hold on to Jordan Walker as long as you can, unless your roster just dictates I've got to do something. I have him in a 15-team reset league, and I'm not dumping him. I am cutting Louis Varland though. He's off my roster, but I'm not going to cut Jordan Walker until I absolutely have to.
All right. You can reach me on social media, Justin Mason FWFB. I'm on all of them, but I mostly use Twitter and YouTube. You can catch me on, obviously, Sleeper and Buzz podcast, but also the Friends of Fantasy Benefits podcast. And I write 5 days a week at Fangraphs and 3 days a week at Fantasy Pros. Forgot my schedule for a second. For Jason, Blake, and myself, thank you for listening. Have a fantastic baseball season.